ministers talking about that. There's a lot to get to. Let's get to it. First, we're going to start in Alberta because what happened yesterday is a big deal. Starting at 8:42 p.m. Ontario time, but 6:42 p.m. Alberta time. I think that's, is it 2 hours? I think that's roughly the time difference. This is when this went out anyway. PipelineOnline.ca says for most of the last hour, Alberta has run with a razor-thin contingency reserve of power, just 20 megawatts. As the batteries ran flat, the AESO, and that's the Alberta Energy, what is it called? The Alberta Energy. It doesn't have the acronym in here. Okay, well, the AESO, let's just keep it that. It says put out a call to immediately reduce their electricity use to minimize the potential for rotating power outages across the province. So that's not great. 6:45 p.m. Alberta time, right? The emergency alert goes out. This is an Alberta emergency alert issued by the AEMA. This alert is in effect for Alberta. Extreme cold resulting in high power demand has placed the Alberta grid at a high risk of rotating power outages this evening. Albertans are asked to immediately limit their electricity use to essential needs only, turn off unnecessary lights and electrical appliances, minimize the use of space heaters, delay use of major power appliances, delay charging electric vehicles, and plugging block heaters in. Cook with microwave instead of stove. For more info, visit the Alberta Electric System Operator website. So, I mean, it's a pretty serious thing when it's that cold outside, right? And it is very cold outside in Alberta. Reliable Alberta Energy, and I love this. I follow this guy's tweets this entity's tweets, and I enjoy their content because a lot of the time it shows the power mix, and wind, solar, all of that is taken into account in the almost hourly tweets. So they say, at this moment, the current capacities, Alberta would need 79 more Brazeau-sized dams, or 209,010 more wind turbines. That's 52 per day to have what is needed by January 1st, 2035, every day between now and then. Or 271,000 and change more acres of solar panels. So yeah, that's 696,000 NHL ice surfaces. So that's pretty wild. Totally unfeasible, not going to happen. It's not going to happen to replace the carbon, right? To replace all the carbon-based generation that's happening. So if you don't want to freeze in the dark in Alberta, well, you have to use all of these oil and gas products. You're welcome. They work even when it's not, the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. Right? They work. And when it's minus 50 out, it still works. Here's Scott Moe. He says Saskatchewan Power is providing 153 megawatts of electricity to Alberta this evening to assist them through this shortage. That power will be coming from natural gas and coal-fired plants, the ones the Trudeau government is telling us to shut down, which we won't. This is the emergency alert as well. Where does it say? Delay charging electrical vehicles and plugging in block heaters. So this is the emergency. This is the one I saw as well. So turn off unnecessary lights and electric appliances, minimize the use of space heaters, delay use of major power appliances, delay charging electric vehicles, and plugging in block heaters. I think that's the other, maybe that's not the other thing. That was the one I mentioned at the top. Here's Danielle Smith. This is the effect of that emergency alert. She says, Albertans are amazing. I want to thank everyone who is helping by reducing your electricity use at this time. Please continue to help by watching your power usage over the next couple of days. Blake says, here's a zoomed in version. Load fell by about 150 megawatts in the minutes after the alert went out, has continued to fall rapidly since. So the alert went out and the power draw immediately started declining. So that is an engaged public willing to help out and make sure the grid doesn't fail, right? AESO says, thank you, Alberta. Your conservation efforts quickly reduced electricity demand and the risk of rotating outages. A special shout out to our system controllers, industry partners, and the government of Alberta for keeping the power flowing and all Albertans safe and warm tonight. So there you go. There were no blackouts as far as I am aware of. Maybe, small ones here and there, but nothing major. We had blackout the other day in Guelph, but it's not minus 50 in Guelph. So they're not really the same thing. Reliable Alberta Energy, again, the same person who put out the tweet talking about how many swimming pools and ice surfaces and things like that you'd need for solar panels and things, put this tweet out. They say, I don't make a lot of comments on here, but this is bullshit. Being asked to save electricity in one of the coldest places on the planet that also happens to sit on one of the largest energy supplies in the world is insane. We should be one of the wealthiest, most advanced societies in the world. Instead, we're all sitting in the dark with our fingers crossed that the heat stays on. We've gone backwards, not forwards. End of rant. So yeah, it's unfortunate to feel that kind of disappointment, because I think a lot of people felt really optimistic in the early 2000s. Like, sky's the limit. Karen said, it's still true. It's just the feeling of the government. They don't feel optimistic. They feel very stuck in their ways, and well, ass backwards, really. Their solutions to problems create more problems. They don't solve problems. Karen says, CTV is reporting Albertans asked to conserve energy during cold spell. Me, now just imagine if all cars were electric too. Starting to get the picture of just how dangerous Trudeau is and why Pierre Poilievre is so important to Canada. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. I mean, if Poilievre is not a dairy cartel acolyte and or somehow connected to what's going on, I would question how he got the position in the first place, right? But I would be happy to be wrong about this. So, because if Canada does well and can break free from being controlled by foreign entities like the WEF, then that's good news. The faster and quicker we can do it, that's good news. And with the least amount of open conflict, because I don't want open conflict, right? Chocolate cereal takes a hit during open conflict. Nobody's worried about making sure the store shelves are stocked with chocolate cereal if there's bombs flying. Probably, I would imagine. I don't think they had chocolate cereal in the 40s, but if they did. Mark says, I took my wife to work today this is the other one. This is the anecdotal story for EVs to not be a thing. They're just not going to work after people get a taste of them, and then people just aren't going to want to use them. And that's one of the other reasons why Hertz getting rid of them is such a big industry signal as well. Mark says, I took my wife into work today for safety's sake. It's minus 45 this morning. So good job, Mark. Saw a fellow sitting in his EV at a charging station. The businesses were still closed for him to stay warm and dawdle with his car while his car charged. I briefly spoke with him as he went into the store. He said he'd been sitting in the car running the heaters and it was taking about twice as long to charge. The car's range was about 280 kilometers in the cold, he said. The fellow said his trip to Saskatoon from Kelowna takes about 3 times longer for charging time, sitting time. His charges today were about $100 and 2 hours of sitting with heaters on, and the battery was only 2/3 charged. He said he liked his EV, but only in the summer. But he said only if it's not too hot. AC drains the battery very fast. So if you live in Canada and are considering buying an EV, make sure your pockets are deep and you're never on a schedule. I wished him luck. His name was John from Kelowna. So yeah, there you go. You know, Canada is so small and tight-knit community. Couple people know that guy. CW says, so I just think that the EVs offer such a worse product compared to a gas vehicle. I can't help but wonder why Elon Musk, or why somebody, not Elon Musk necessarily, somebody else hasn't taken Elon Musk's self-driving car, like the interior of the car thing, not the design wholesale, but the self-driving, the large display, all of that stuff, the integrated kind of, I don't know, it's supposed to be like the Knight Rider car, isn't it? Right? A little bit. That's kind of what Elon's going for with the Tesla S and all that, right? Isn't he? So go take that and put that into a gas car. Like, it would compete, and I think it would probably do really well. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's one of those things where I just think you're missing an opportunity. There's a missed opportunity for regular gas-powered cars, because I don't think these EVs are going to be long for this market anyway. Anyway, moving on a little bit. Carbon. And CW says, if the Chinese can have coal-fired plants to have low-cost, reliable power, then Albertans can too. Eliminate all imported power and get back the Alberta low-cost power advantage again. Alberta, or Danielle Smith, start Monday morning. I said, start now. Why not start now? But yeah, I said the other day I was behind Ontario not having coal plants. If the difference is a lot of business opportunity and dropping the energy bills to like historic lows, and not having to pay through our nose for subsidies from taxes, because we're paying billions of dollars in tax subsidies to have the electricity bills we have. Paying twice for electricity is wonderful, isn't it? So if we did that, if we built coal plants because they're cheap and whatever it is, then like that's an argument could be made, because I think you could build some coal plants and not cause smog days. So where's that balance? Could we hit that balance, right? But anyway, regardless, there are benefits, right? There are benefits to these things, regardless. Moving on, Lori Goldstein says, big issue. If we want to turn Canada into a clean energy superpower in mining the raw minerals for EV batteries in Canada, the mining approval process will have to be dramatically shortened. Conservative leader promises to speed approvals for new mines. Again, it's one of those things. I don't think that we want to be strip mining for minerals in Canada. And somebody said, I'm going to find it because it's spot on. Here's the response right at the top. How is massive mining any more clean than using oil and gas? It's not, right? It just isn't. So here's another piece of news. John Kerry, Guy Smiley himself, he always reminded me of Guy Smiley from Sesame Street, has moved on. He's no longer this climate czar. Dave says Kerry is stepping down as the climate czar who will fill the void left by the departure of such a galaxy-class immoral ignoramus. So there you go. Interesting stuff. No more John Kerry. Shucks, right? He'll probably pop up at Davos. He's really, really connected. Really connected. And if you mention it, some people have ended up. Darshan Maharaja says, a tax on home ownership by any other name is still a tax on home ownership. So Blacklock's reporter is reporting. Fed report proposes charging homeowners for mandatory climate change insurance. We welcome and support the core findings, says Minister Bill Blair. So it's an interesting way. It's like Obamacare. Like, you are forced to get healthcare insurance because, you're going to need healthcare at some point, says Obama, and you'll get to keep your doctor. Don't worry about that. It reminds me of Obamacare, the rationale, and then ultimately Obamacare was struck down as unconstitutional. You can't force people to buy insurance, but they're going to try and force people. I mean, I guess you can force people to buy insurance if they want to drive, but there are people out there who have arguments about you don't even need a driver's license to drive, right? There was a time before driver's licenses. But regardless, and honestly, these days, have you seen the number of truckers who hit overhead bridges and things like that? It seems like they can't read the signs, or it's a purposeful attack on infrastructure. And within that line, in Guelph, we had power taken out of a whole neighborhood yesterday. I mentioned it earlier, but it was because a truck drove into power lines because they had their box up, right? And then same thing happened a couple of days earlier at a different spot in Guelph. So pretty wild stuff. Anyway, back to this. Do you think that they will be able to force homeowners to buy insurance for climate change? What do you think? Do you think the insurance is going to pay out? Yeah, we've had a climate changey flood. Thanks. So yeah, it's only $10, right? Okay, right. Thanks for the payout. They don't want tobogganing in Toronto. They don't want to have toboggan. They don't want people having fun. Winston says people should just organize and overwhelm these hills with sledders. This is beyond nonsense. It's not the government's job to bubble wrap society. So here is no fun. Toronto bans tobogganing at 45 hills across the city, says councillor, unhappy with the move. He says, the city says there are 29 designated toboggan hills in 27 park locations across the city. So these are the places you can go to toboggan. These are the places that are banned from tobogganing. So I don't know, man. It's a lot of behavior shaping. Derek says, silly kids, public parks are for encampments and drug dens. CBC, this is in response to CBC Toronto reporting. Toronto has banned tobogganing at 45 hills across the city due to safety concerns. One councillor says he's not happy with the move because there are more important issues that should be drawing the attention of city staff. Well, that's the truth, honestly. Here is Bruce Party, and this is kind of along the lines of safetyism. If you believe that some expert knows something about this toboggan hill that you don't, right, and they can dictate to you what you can and can't do, that is the root of the problem. And that's what he articulates here well. And for me, I think you walk up to this hill, you assess the trees, you assess where they are, you aim your sled, You cross your fingers and you close your eyes, right? Like, push off and go, right? Hope for the best. That's how tobogganing works. Welcome to Canada, kids. It's crazy out here. Anyway, here we go.
Base of the battle is an idea, and the idea is the problem. The idea is that it is appropriate for government, with its expertise and technocratic know-how, to be in a position to tell us all what to do. As long as people embrace that idea, we have a problem, and that's the idea at the base of what happened the first time around, and it's the idea that resides in the WHO plan. The premise is there are some people with expertise who have the appropriate authority to tell us all what to do. We have to get rid of that idea. That's the managerial idea. And as long as people are thinking, this is my opinion, as long as people are thinking that what happened the first time around was simply a series of policy mistakes, those people who had authority, didn't consider the science properly, or didn't make the right call on this, or didn't weigh costs and benefits properly. It's a series of policy mistakes. We shouldn't allow those policy mistakes to be made again. Well, they were definitely policy mistakes, but that misses the point for me. The point is, we shouldn't have people with the authority to do these kinds of things, whether or not they've got the science right or not, whether or not they've considered costs and benefits. It's not their job, I think, to do that kind of thing. And as long as we continue to believe that society must be managed by an expert technocracy, you're going to have a problem.
Right. And we are being convinced it's not just people are, allowing it to happen kind of blindly. There's an active dance going on right now with the propaganda to convince us that we actively need it, that the experts are necessary to make sure that you're safe going down that toboggan hill, and that you're safe staying in your house free from germs and things like that. Get your latest booster because that will protect you from the hurricane coming in. It's insane, but that's what we're being herded towards, right? And it's clumsy, but as more people kind of do what they're told, it seems to tighten up, and their messaging gets clearer. And we've seen that a few times through different examples, right? Stay home, stay safe, get your vaccine, get boosted. They've run this kind of thing a bunch of times to try and influence people, and it feels like each time like we're sheep being herded by sheepdogs every time. And it's almost obvious. And people are starting to see the same things with the rollouts of Disease X. People are going to talk about Disease X, and we're seeing monkeypox. When monkeypox started rolling up and everybody pointed and laughed, and they realized that monkeypox wasn't going to be a thing. So people are recognizing the patterns as well every time they try and ramp one of these up. But sometimes they throw 10 things at the wall and one sticks. And the one that sticks is not one you'd expect, right? So sometimes the public gets taken by something and you don't even expect it, but then the powers that be exploit that to move their agenda forward, because they really do. Andy Lee is pointing this out, and she says, will the Trudeau government allow another mining asset to be acquired by Chinese mining giant Zing without a national security review being conducted? Pay attention. So they allowed this before, and are they going to allow it again? Yes, they will. This is our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau with Dr. Morgan Gongbo Lee. Dr. Lee was the former overseas chair of Zing Mining, the Chinese state-owned company that has been permitted to acquire 4 Canadian mining assets without national security reviews since 2018. Right? Man, pays off in spades, right? Pays off in spades having your people where they need to be. Niall says, Chinese investment into Canadian critical materials sector ramps up as Zing Mining looks to take 15% stake in Vancouver's Solaris Resources. So there's all sorts of things happening, and it's high level and it's complicated. And unless you're plugged into those things, I don't think you'd understand the implications. Most people don't understand the implications of what's going on. And so we are at a situation, well, we're going to talk about later in the show on this tab right here, talk about a board game, Werewolf, and talk about people who are informed versus uninformed. And so we're purposely having the wool pulled over our eyes so that we are uninformed and they can play us because they have more information than we do. right? And so that's what I think, but we'll get there in a few minutes. First, we have to go through this. Justin Trudeau is exaggerating when he states Canada assisted in the planning of attacks on Yemen by USA and Brits to protect global shipping interests. Canada's contribution was 2 planners and an intelligence analyst. I kid you not. We are a friggin' embarrassment. I don't even think we sent fuel. We were like, we're not sending any ships. But we paid for these guys' tickets. It was Coach. 3 people. Justin Trudeau was in Guelph the other day. He was making a housing announcement. He's terrible. He was around the corner from where I wasn't too far away from where I live, really. And so it's one of those things where I didn't go. I found out afterwards. I found out at like 2:00 that he was in town and he was touring this facility, etc. And here's Andrew Lawton talking about this. And he says, once again, the Prime Minister's office would not allow Trudeau or True North to attend his press conference. So True North is being frozen out of press conferences as well. Is Rebel News frozen out? They're not allowed to go to these conferences or whatever. Somebody asked why not. Lawton says, no clue. They won't even respond with a rejection. I didn't bother showing up this time, but when I have, they just stick to the you're not accredited line. And then he goes through the technicalities of True North not being accredited because they don't have a full-time Ottawa Parliament presence. So there you go. So there you want, right? But fundamentally, I don't think that should matter if you want to attend a Prime Minister's press conference when when the Prime Minister's showing up somewhere to do remarks. You should be able to attend and hear the remarks if you're press. Moving on, let's talk about immigration. Ryan says, imagine a restaurant. This is my analogy. I use this all the time, right? You invite people over and you have 2 pizzas, right? So you have like 20 slices of pizza. If 200 people show up, things are going to go badly, right? So this analogy is similar. Imagine a restaurant that can only seat 100 people. Mark brings in 100 more and tells us there's no simple reason why 100 more can't sit. So Mark Miller says there are no simple answers to the immigration and housing question. There are simple answers to the immigration and housing question. The simple answer is to deport illegals, to stop the high targets for new immigrants, both the temporary students, temporary foreign workers to a degree, because there's a lot of people who have started relying on temporary foreign workers, and there are issues with workforce, et cetera. I've seen write-ups, and I think I reported on a write-up in 2019 or 2020 about a farmer who was suffering because of the changes in temporary foreign worker laws in that year with regards to the agricultural workers, the migrant workers, I guess they're called, people who pick fruit and things like that. And so there were rule changes around that, and the person was going to lose their cranberry. I think it was a cranberry farm. And so he was writing in just kind of an open letter, like, hey, like this is going to destroy everything I've worked for, and I'm kind of screwed here. So you need to change policies in a way that the industry that is adapted to old bad policies can adapt to. Right? Like you can't just come and turn off taps on things that people rely on without giving them an option that's as good or as comparable, right? So, man, it's really frustrating to watch people who are ideologically driven create problems and then try and fix them ad hoc and fix them in a way that creates more problems. And it seems like that's on purpose. CTV News is reporting a system that's gotten out of control. Immigration minister to consider a cap on international students in Canada. So there are no simple answers to the immigration problem, but we're going to stop some people from coming to deal with the demand. And that's what they say here. Immigration Minister Mark Miller says in the next few months, he'll be looking at the possibility of putting a cap on the number of international students living in Canada, but he wouldn't say how great a reduction the government is planning on making. In an interview airing Sunday, the minister told CTV's Question Period host Vasi Kapoulis that this is a conversation that the federal government will need to have with provincial governments to make sure that the provinces have not been doing their jobs to actually rein in those numbers on a pure volume basis. That volume is disconcerting, Miller said in reference to the number of international students in Canada. It's really a system that has gotten out of control. The federal government has faced criticism for welcoming an increased number of immigrants, both permanent and temporary residents, while the country faces an acute housing shortage. Meanwhile, new reporting by the Canada Press, citing internal documents obtained through an access to information request, shows the federal government was warned by the public servants 2 years ago that its ambitious immigration target could jeopardize housing affordability. The Liberals have set targets aiming to bring in 485,000 immigrants this year and 500,000 in both 25 and 26. Temporary residents, largely comprised of international students and migrant workers, are another part of the equation, with more than 300,000 of them arriving in Canada in just the third quarter of last year. Miller said he'll be looking at both the first and second quarter of this year at possibly setting a cap on international students to help reduce the demand for housing, which is the only way you can have any kind of impact on the number of on fixing the housing problem. If you don't look at reducing demand, we can't build enough supply to meet what they've created, like the demand they've created with the immigration. So hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful